Michael was known all over the city as a man of great wealth. His name appeared in magazines, his business deals were discussed in newspapers, and his mansion stood like a monument of power and success. People admired his luxury cars, his well-dressed staff, and the glittering parties he hosted for the rich and powerful. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But behind the heavy gates and tall walls of that grand house lived a sadness that money could never heal. Michael's only son, Daniel, was paralyzed. Daniel had once been a bright, playful child. When he was 6 years old, he loved running in the garden, playing with toy planes, and laughing loudly with his parents. But one rainy evening, an accident changed everything. He fell badly from a swing in their backyard, and though the doctors tried their best, they could not save the movement in his legs. At only 7 years old, Daniel was told he would never walk again. The day he heard those words, something inside him broke. His smile faded. His laughter disappeared. He never ran again. Now, at the age of 9, Daniel spent most of his days in a wheelchair. His room had a tall window that looked over the mansion's front yard. Every afternoon, he sat there quietly, gazing outside, watching other children from the neighborhood chase balls, ride bicycles, and play tag. Their cheerful voices floated into his room, but they sounded like music he was not allowed to join. None of the children ever came to the gate to call for him. None of them waved in his direction. For them, Daniel was invisible. Michael tried everything to make his son happy. He bought him the most expensive toys, remote-controlled cars, shining robots, even a custom-made racing track. He built a private library for him and hired the best tutors. He even transformed one of the mansion's halls into a play area filled with slides, trampolines, and colorful walls. But no matter how many toys or games surrounded him, Daniel still felt empty. Toys could move, but they could not laugh with him. Tutors could teach, but they could not share secrets or jokes like friends did. Jennifer, Daniel's mother, spent her days trying to comfort him. She brushed his soft brown hair, told him bedtime stories, and whispered hopeful words into his ears. One day, "Daniel, someone special will walk into your life," she would say gently. "Someone who will not see your wheelchair, but will see you." Daniel would smile faintly at her words, but deep inside, he had stopped believing. To him, the mansion felt like a golden cage. He was safe, but he was alone. Far away, on the other side of town, a little girl named Emily lived with her grandmother. Unlike Daniel, she had no wealth, no mansion, and no expensive toys. Her clothes were simple, often patched by her grandmother's careful hands. Her shoes were worn from walking long distances to the market. Life was not easy for Emily, but she carried a light in her heart, a kindness that even hardship could not dim. Every morning, Emily passed by the tall gates of Michael's mansion. The iron bars rose higher than her head, shiny and strong. Behind them, she could see the beautiful garden filled with roses and trimmed grass. She had heard whispers in the town about the rich man's son, how he never came out, how nobody ever played with him. Some children made up strange stories about him, but Emily never believed them. Instead, she always wondered what his life might be like inside that big house. One sunny afternoon, Emily was chasing a little red ball near the street. The ball bounced out of her hands and rolled across the road until it stopped near the mansion gate. She ran after it quickly, her braids flying behind her, and bent down to pick it up. As she lifted her head, her eyes met a pair of brown eyes staring at her from the window above. It was Daniel. For a moment, both children froze. Daniel had grown so used to being unseen that he didn't know what to do when someone actually looked at him. Emily, on the other hand, felt curious. She tilted her head, gave him a small smile, and lifted her hand in a wave. Daniel's lips trembled. Nobody had ever waved at him before. Not once. His chest tightened as if something long asleep inside him had suddenly awakened. He slowly lifted his hand, uncertain, and waved back. Emily's smile grew brighter. She clutched her ball and called softly, though her voice barely carried across the gate, "Hi." Daniel could not answer loudly, but his smile said what his words could not. From that day onward, Emily began to notice Daniel every time she passed by the mansion. Sometimes she waved, sometimes she smiled, and once she even tossed her ball high in the air just to make him laugh. Daniel began to wait for her at the window. His afternoons of silence turned into afternoons of hope. His eyes searched the road, waiting for the little girl with the patched dress and kind smile. Michael noticed the change in his son. One evening, as he entered Daniel's room, he saw him smiling at the window, something he had not seen in years. "What makes you so happy, my boy?" he asked softly. Daniel turned his face toward his father, his voice quiet but filled with warmth. "There's a girl, Dad. She waves at me. Every day." Michael's heart ached. For all the millions he had spent, all it took was a simple wave from a stranger to bring his son joy. At that moment, he realized something that money had blinded him to all along. What Daniel needed was not toys, not tutors, not golden walls. What he needed was a friend. That night, Daniel went to bed with a new feeling inside him. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't hopelessness. It was a tiny spark of something he had almost forgotten: hope. The silent mansion had heard the sound of change. And it began with a smile. The following week brought small but powerful changes to Daniel's life. For years, his afternoons had been the same quiet hours filled with silence, broken only by the sound of the wind brushing against the tall trees in the garden. But now, every day carried a new sense of waiting. At exactly 3 o'clock, Daniel would will himself toward the window. His eyes would search the road outside the mansion's gate. His heart would beat faster, not for a new toy, not for a gift from his father, but for a simple smile. He waited for the little girl with the patched dress. Her name, he soon learned, was Emily. It was Michael who first asked around the town. He had seen how much Daniel's mood had lifted ever since Emily appeared. For the first time in years, his son seemed alive. Michael wanted to know who the girl was. Through one of his staff, he discovered that Emily lived in a small wooden house with her grandmother. They were poor, but respected. Emily's parents had passed away when she was very young, and her grandmother raised her with love, though life for them was not easy. Michael told Jennifer about it one evening as they sat in the study. "It's strange," he said thoughtfully, "that all our wealth could not bring a smile to Daniel's face. Yet, this little girl, with nothing in her hands, managed to change him in just a few days." Jennifer's eyes softened. "Perhaps because she gives what money cannot, kindness," she whispered. The next day, Daniel sat by the window again. Emily appeared on the road, carrying a small basket of vegetables. As always, she stopped by the gate and smiled up at him. Daniel, feeling braver now, raised his voice. "Hi." Emily stopped in surprise. It was the first time she had heard his voice. Her smile grew wider. "Hi," she shouted back, her small voice carrying across the distance. Daniel laughed. The sound startled even him, for it had been so long since he had laughed out loud. Emily tilted her head. "What's your name?" she called. "Daniel," he replied, his voice breaking but full of excitement. "I'm Emily," she shouted back, holding her basket close. From that moment, they began to exchange words across the gate every day. Emily would tell him about her school, her grandmother, and the funny little cat that always followed her to the market. Daniel would tell her about his favorite books, his toys, and the roses in the garden that he often smelled in the evenings. Though they had never been close enough to shake hands, a friendship began to bloom between them, pure, gentle, and full of warmth. One afternoon, the sky turned gray, and rain began to fall heavily. Daniel thought Emily would not come that day. He sat at the window, disappointed, staring at the empty street. But then, through the curtain of rain, he saw her. Emily was running, her little shoes splashing in puddles, clutching her basket over her head. She stopped at the gate, completely soaked, and waved at him with her free hand. Daniel's heart swelled. She had come, even in the storm. He lifted his hand and waved back, his smile brighter than ever before. For a moment, he forgot about his wheelchair, his loneliness, his pain. All he felt was joy. Inside the mansion, Michael watched the scene from the hall. Something inside him shifted. He had always been proud of his fortune, believing it could solve any problem. But now, looking at his son and the poor little girl who stood outside in the rain, he realized that love and friendship were treasures no wealth could buy. That evening, he sat with Jennifer in the living room. "I think we should invite Emily in," he said slowly. Jennifer looked at him with surprise, then nodded. "Yes. She has already done more for Daniel than anyone else. Perhaps it is time they meet properly." The next morning, Michael instructed one of the staff to open the gate when Emily passed by. At first, she was hesitant, clutching her basket tightly. She had never stepped inside such a grand house. The walls seemed taller up close, the fountain in the garden sparkled, and the flowers looked brighter than she had ever seen. The staff led her through the wide doors and polished floors until she reached Daniel's room. Daniel's eyes widened when he saw her standing there, no longer separated by bars or distance. For the first time, his friend was real and close enough to touch. Emily looked around the room in awe: the tall shelves of books, the soft curtains, the toys neatly arranged. But when her eyes settled on Daniel, she smiled the same simple smile she always did at the gate. "Hi," she said softly. Daniel's throat tightened. He whispered, "Hi." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Emily walked closer, her little shoes tapping on the floor, and stood beside his wheelchair. She reached out and held his hand gently, without hesitation. Daniel felt warmth spread through his heart. He had feared for so long that others would only see his wheelchair, his weakness, his difference. But Emily did not hesitate, did not look at him with pity. She looked at him like a friend. Jennifer stood quietly at the door, her eyes shining with tears. Michael, too, watched silently. For the first time in years, their son was not lonely. The two children began to talk, this time without shouting across the gate. Emily told him stories about her school and the games she played with other children. Daniel listened with fascination, laughing when she described the cat that stole fish from the market. Then he showed her his favorite toy plane, his treasured books, and the rose plant he kept near his window. Emily touched the toy plane carefully. "It's beautiful," she said. "One day, when you fly it outside, I'll catch it for you." Daniel's smile grew brighter than ever. As the evening sun set, Emily finally stood to leave. But before she left, she leaned closer and whispered, "See you tomorrow, friend." The word friend echoed in Daniel's heart like music. It was the first time anyone had ever called him that. When the door closed behind her, Daniel leaned back in his wheelchair, still smiling. He whispered the word again to himself, friend. The silent mansion was silent no more. The following days were filled with excitement and laughter in Daniel's room, something that had been missing for a long time. Emily came to the mansion every afternoon, carrying her little basket, sometimes with fruits, sometimes with bread she had baked with her grandmother. She would run to Daniel's room, not hesitating for a moment, and they would spend hours talking, playing, and sharing stories. Daniel looked forward to her arrival more than anything else in his life. His afternoons, once silent and lonely, were now filled with chatter, laughter, and the kind of happiness that money could never buy. One morning, Emily brought a small notebook. Its cover was worn, but the pages were clean. "I made something for you," she said shyly. Daniel opened it carefully. Inside were drawings, flowers, trees, birds, and a little boy in a wheelchair playing with a girl in a patched dress. Emily had drawn them together, laughing and smiling. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Nobody had ever made something for him before, nobody had ever thought of him in this way. He looked at Emily, his voice trembling, "Thank you, this is the best gift I've ever had." Emily smiled, her small face lighting up. "Because you're my friend, Daniel. Friends give gifts to each other with love, not money." For the first time, Daniel understood the value of true friendship. He realized that it was not the toys, the gold, or the mansion that mattered. It was the person who cared enough to be there, to share moments, and to listen. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Daniel's bond grew stronger. They played games that did not require running or jumping, but still filled the room with laughter. They created stories together, imagining a magical land where children with all abilities could play freely. Daniel even invented a little game using his toy cars, where he and Emily would build tracks across the floor and race them with imaginary obstacles. Michael and Jennifer watched this transformation silently. Michael often found himself in the hall, peeking through the door, amazed at the change in his son. Daniel's cheeks, once pale and lifeless, now glowed with excitement. His eyes, once dull and sad, now sparkled with joy. One afternoon, Michael decided to join them. He entered Daniel's room with a gentle smile. "May I play too?" he asked. Daniel looked at his father in surprise. You want to play?" Michael nodded. "I want to play. With both my children." Emily giggled, her voice light and cheerful. "Of course. You can join us, Mr. Michael." The three of them spent the afternoon rolling toy cars across the floor, making up funny stories for each one. Laughter filled the mansion, echoing off the walls that had been silent for so long. That evening, Jennifer hugged Daniel tightly. "See, sweetheart. You're not alone anymore," she whispered. Daniel hugged her back, realizing that she had been right all along. A true friend could change a life, and Emily had changed his. But Emily's life outside the mansion was not easy. She had chores at home, her grandmother depended on her, and she had to attend school every day. Sometimes, Daniel would worry when she didn't come by. One afternoon, he asked quietly, "Emily, will you always come to see me?" Emily paused, her small hands clutching the wheelchair handle. "I will try my best, Daniel. But sometimes, I may not be able to come." Daniel nodded, understanding. He had never had a friend before, so he didn't know how much effort friendship required. But he trusted Emily, and that trust brought comfort to his heart. One day, Michael had an idea. He wanted to show Daniel something special. He wheeled Daniel to the mansion garden, where a small wooden swing had been placed. It was made especially for him, with soft cushions and a sturdy frame. Daniel's eyes widened in surprise. "A swing, for me?" he asked, his voice trembling with excitement. Michael nodded. "Yes, Daniel. I want you to enjoy the garden, to feel the wind on your face, even if you cannot walk or run." Emily was there too, holding Daniel's hand. She helped him settle onto the swing safely. Then, gently, she pushed him forward. Daniel felt the wind on his face for the first time in years, and he laughed a pure, joyful sound that filled the garden. "Faster," he shouted. Emily pushed him carefully, laughing along with him. For the first time, Daniel felt free, even though he was still in his wheelchair. The garden, the swing, and Emily's presence created a moment that would stay in his memory forever. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Michael realized something important. All the money in the world could not replace love, care, and friendship. Emily had given his son something far greater than any toy or mansion. She had given him joy, hope, and a sense of belonging. The next day, Daniel made a small gift for Emily. Using colored pencils, he drew a picture of them together on the swing in the garden, laughing under the sunset. He gave it to her, his hands shaking slightly. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "It's beautiful, Daniel. I will keep it forever," she exclaimed. The friendship between the two children became the talk of the mansion. The staff, who had been quiet and distant, started smiling more often, charmed by the children's laughter. The once silent halls now echoed with happiness, and even Michael found himself enjoying the simple joy of watching them play. But more than that, Daniel changed. He became more confident, more willing to try small challenges in his room and in the garden. He started speaking more, sharing his thoughts, and even asking questions about the world outside the mansion. Emily's presence had unlocked something in him, a strength and happiness that had been hidden beneath years of sadness. One rainy afternoon, Emily came running as usual, her small shoes splashing through puddles. Daniel looked at her and shouted, "Emily, you didn't get wet too much, did you?" Emily laughed. "I like the rain. And I like running to see my friend." Daniel smiled, realizing that for the first time, he had someone who truly cared about him, not because of his wealth, not because of his family, but because of who he was. As the days passed, it became clear to everyone that the friendship between Daniel and Emily was transforming more than just Daniel's life. It was bringing warmth to the mansion, teaching Michael and Jennifer the true meaning of happiness, and showing that love and kindness could cross any barrier, wealth, ability, or background. By the end of part 3, Daniel no longer looked out of the window longing for a friend. His friend was there, beside him, holding his hand, laughing, and sharing life's simple joys. The millionaire's mansion had finally become a home not just of wealth, but of love, friendship, and hope. And it all began with a little girl who saw not a wheelchair, but a child who needed a friend. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Daniel and Emily continued to grow stronger. What had begun as a simple friendship across a gate had blossomed into something deeper, a connection that brought light into Daniel's once lonely world. One morning, Emily arrived with a bright idea. She held a small bundle of paper in her hands and said excitedly, "Daniel, I want to show you something." Daniel leaned forward in his wheelchair, curious. "What is it?" Emily spread out the papers on the desk. They were drawings, pictures of children playing together, holding hands, and laughing under the sun. "I want to make a little book," she explained. "A book about kids who have no one to play with, and how friends can change their lives. I want our story to be in it too." Daniel's eyes widened. He had never imagined something like this. You want to write about me?" he asked softly. Emily nodded. "Of course. You're my best friend. Our story can show everyone that friends can make life better." Touched by her words, Daniel smiled shyly. "I'd like that," he said. Over the next few days, they worked together. Daniel dictated stories while Emily drew pictures to match. They laughed at their silly ideas, cheered when a drawing turned out well, and even argued a little when they couldn't agree on a detail. But every disagreement ended in laughter. For Daniel, these hours were more precious than any toy or gadget. They were creating something meaningful together. Michael and Jennifer watched this new project with pride. Michael, who had always believed that wealth could solve every problem, began to understand the true value of connection and creativity. Jennifer encouraged Daniel to share his feelings and thoughts, amazed at how much confidence he had gained since meeting Emily. One afternoon, while they were working, Emily looked up at the window. "Daniel, I wish other kids could see us too," she said softly. "Then maybe they would understand that friendship doesn't care about money or who you are." Daniel thought for a moment. Maybe I can show them," he said quietly. "We can invite them to the garden. You and we can play with them. Then everyone can see that kids like me can have fun too." Emily's eyes sparkled. "Yes. Let's do it." The next day, they began making simple invitations. Emily delivered them to children in the neighborhood, explaining that they were welcome to the mansion garden for an afternoon of games and stories. Some children were skeptical. After all, the millionaire's son had always seemed untouchable, and the mansion seemed far away. But Emily's enthusiasm was contagious, and soon a small group of children agreed to come. The big day arrived. Daniel waited nervously by the garden gate. Emily held his hand, giving him courage. Slowly, the children began to arrive, shy and unsure. Some peeked over the gate, whispering to each other. "Daniel, is it really you?" one boy asked. Daniel nodded, feeling a flutter of excitement. "Yes. Come in. Let's play." The first step was the hardest. Some children hesitated, looking at Daniel's wheelchair. But Emily stayed close, smiling and encouraging them. "He's our friend," she said simply. "And friends can play in many ways." Soon, the garden was alive with laughter. They rolled balls, raced toy cars, and created imaginary adventures. Daniel showed them his drawings, and Emily helped them add their own colors. By the end of the afternoon, the children forgot to see differences. They saw only fun, friendship, and joy. Michael and Jennifer watched from the veranda, their hearts full. Michael finally understood that wealth could not buy this happiness that comes from acceptance, care, and friendship was far more valuable. As the sun began to set, the children left one by one, promising to return. Daniel and Emily sat together in the garden, their hands clasped tightly. "We did it," Daniel whispered. "We showed them, friendship matters more than anything else." Emily nodded, her small face glowing in the evening light. "And it will keep spreading, Daniel. We can make more kids happy." Over the next few weeks, more children visited. Word spread through the neighborhood about the little girl who had befriended the millionaire's son. The garden became a place of laughter, stories, and shared games. Daniel no longer spent his afternoons staring out the window in longing. Instead, he looked forward to seeing new friends, playing, and sharing his world with others. One chilly morning, Emily arrived with a new idea. "Daniel," she said, "I think we can do more. We can make a small club for kids who feel lonely. We can meet here every week and do fun things together. What do you think?" Daniel's face lit up. "A club, for everyone? That sounds amazing." With Michael and Jennifer's help, they organized the first meeting. Emily and Daniel welcomed children from all over the neighborhood. Some were shy, some were curious, and some had never played with anyone before. But Emily's kindness and Daniel's gentle encouragement helped everyone feel included. That afternoon, as children painted, played games, and shared stories, Daniel realized something important. His life had changed completely, not because of the mansion, his toys, or his father's wealth, but because someone had seen him as a friend. Emily's courage to reach out had transformed not only his life but the lives of many children around them. Michael, standing quietly nearby, felt a deep sense of pride. He had learned a lesson no business deal or investment could teach: true wealth is measured in love, kindness, and the happiness of those we care about. Jennifer hugged Emily tightly, grateful for the light the little girl had brought into their lives. That evening, when the garden was empty and the sun had disappeared behind the horizon, Daniel and Emily sat together, exhausted but happy. "You know," Daniel said softly, "I never thought I would feel this way. I used to be lonely all the time. But now, I feel like I belong." Emily smiled, brushing her wet hair from her face. "You do belong, Daniel. And now, so do others. Friends help each other belong." Daniel looked at the sky, painted in shades of orange and pink. He felt a sense of hope he had never known. The world outside the mansion, once frightening and distant, now felt welcoming and full of possibilities. Emily leaned closer and whispered, "Daniel, we're making the world brighter, one friendship at a time." Daniel nodded, squeezing her hand. "And it all started with you, Emily. You changed everything for me." Emily blushed, but her eyes sparkled. "No, Daniel. You changed too. You opened your heart, and together we made it better." As they watched the stars appear one by one, both children felt a deep bond that would never fade. The mansion was no longer just a home of wealth, it had become a home of friendship, joy, and hope. And all it had taken was a little courage, a kind heart, and the willingness to reach out to someone who needed a friend. The days that followed were filled with more laughter, more play, and more love. Daniel and Emily continued their project of the little book, now including stories of all the children who had joined them. Each story celebrated friendship, acceptance, and the power of kindness. Through Emily's bravery and Daniel's trust, the garden outside the mansion became a symbol, a place where differences didn't matter, where everyone was welcome, and where joy was shared freely. And for Daniel, life had truly changed. The boy who had once been silent and alone was now surrounded by laughter, love, and friendship, a world brighter than any he could have imagined. It was proof of one simple truth: sometimes, one small act of kindness can change everything. The months passed, and Daniel's world continued to brighten. The mansion, once a silent fortress, was now filled with laughter, chatter, and the joyous noise of children playing in the garden. Emily's visits had become a daily part of his life, and the friendship between the two children had grown deeper than either of them had imagined. Daniel had changed in ways no one could have predicted. He was more confident, more cheerful, and more willing to share his thoughts and ideas. Emily had brought out a side of him that had been buried under years of sadness, a side full of hope, curiosity, and courage. One sunny afternoon, Michael and Jennifer decided to host a small gathering for the children who had come to the garden over the past months. They wanted to celebrate friendship, joy, and the spirit of community that had grown around the mansion. Invitations were sent, and soon the garden was filled with children laughing, running, or rolling, in Daniel's case, and sharing stories. Daniel sat in his wheelchair at the center of the garden, surrounded by friends old and new. Emily sat beside him, holding his hand as always. For the first time, he felt truly seen, not just by one friend, but by an entire community. Michael approached Daniel, his eyes soft with pride. "Daniel," he said gently, "look at this. Look at all these children who came to play with you. You've done something wonderful." Daniel's cheeks flushed. "I didn't do it alone, Dad. Emily helped me. She made me brave." Jennifer knelt beside Daniel, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "Your bravery isn't just about being in a wheelchair, Daniel," she said softly. "It's about opening your heart, sharing joy, and making others feel included. That is true courage." Emily squeezed Daniel's hand. "And you're the bravest boy I know," she said. "You showed everyone that friendship doesn't care about differences. You made them feel welcome." The children began playing games together, rolling balls, drawing pictures, and telling stories. Daniel laughed freely, his heart light, as he joined in the fun in his own way. Emily ran from group to group, making sure everyone felt included. The garden had become a magical place, a world where happiness was shared and differences were celebrated. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Michael and Jennifer gathered the children for a small ceremony. "Today," Michael began, "we celebrate friendship, courage, and kindness. We celebrate the bond between Daniel and Emily, who reminded us all of what truly matters in life: love, care, and compassion." He handed Daniel a small book, carefully bound with Emily's drawings and their stories. "This is your story, Daniel," he said. "A story of hope, friendship, and change. You and Emily created something wonderful, and now it belongs to everyone here." Daniel held the book close, his eyes shimmering with tears. I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Thank you." Emily leaned over and whispered, "You did it, Daniel. You made a difference." The children clapped, cheered, and hugged one another. Daniel felt a warmth in his chest that he had never felt before. He realized that his life had truly transformed. No longer was he the lonely boy staring out of a window, wishing for someone to care. Now, he had friends, joy, and a purpose. Over the following weeks, the garden gatherings became a regular event. Children from all over the neighborhood came, some from families who had never thought they could be part of something special. Daniel and Emily became the heart of the group, always welcoming newcomers, sharing stories, and helping everyone feel included. Michael and Jennifer noticed changes in themselves as well. They saw how much happiness a little kindness could bring, how much a simple act of reaching out could transform lives. Michael, who had always believed that wealth could solve every problem, now understood that true richness lay in love, friendship, and shared happiness. One evening, as Daniel and Emily sat together in the garden, Emily asked quietly, "Daniel, do you remember the first time I waved at you from outside the gate?" Daniel smiled, nodding. "Yes. I thought it was just a simple wave, but it changed everything." Emily grinned. "I'm glad I did it. I didn't know it would make such a difference." Daniel looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. You didn't just wave, Emily. You showed me that I could belong, that I could have friends, and that life could be joyful again. You changed my world." Emily blushed, but her smile was radiant. "And you changed mine too, Daniel. I never thought one friendship could make such a difference. You taught me courage, patience, and the value of never giving up on someone." As they sat in the soft evening light, Daniel felt a deep sense of peace. The mansion, once a place of silence and sadness, had become a home full of laughter, friendship, and love. Emily's small act of kindness had opened the doors not only to Daniel's heart but to the hearts of everyone around him. Word of the friendship and the garden gatherings began to spread beyond the neighborhood. Teachers, neighbors, and even local reporters came to see the children playing together, learning the lessons of compassion, courage, and inclusivity. Daniel, once invisible, had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that friendship can break barriers, heal hearts, and transform lives. Michael, watching his son and Emily play with the children, felt tears prick his eyes. "Jennifer," he said quietly, "I've learned something important. We have wealth, yes, but it is nothing compared to what these two children have taught us. They have created something money could never buy." Jennifer smiled, holding his hand. "It's the purest form of happiness, Michael. And it started with a little girl who believed in friendship." One afternoon, Daniel looked around at the garden filled with children. He realized that he had grown not just physically, but emotionally. He had learned patience, courage, and the importance of giving and receiving love. Emily had helped him see that life, no matter the challenges, could still be beautiful. Emily sat beside him, brushing his hair gently. "Do you remember when we first met, Daniel?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded. "Yes. You smiled at me through the gate, and I felt hope for the first time." Emily's eyes shone. "And now, look at all of this. You and I, we didn't just find friendship. We created something bigger. We showed everyone that kindness matters." Daniel took a deep breath. "Yes. And I'll never forget it, Emily. I'll never forget you." As the sun set, painting the sky in warm oranges and pinks, the children played, laughed, and shared stories. The mansion, once a silent place of loneliness, was now a home filled with joy, hope, and love. Daniel's life had transformed completely, and it all began with one simple act, a wave from a little girl who cared. That evening, as Emily left to go home, she turned to Daniel and whispered, "Good night, friend. Tomorrow will be another beautiful day." Daniel smiled, feeling warmth in his heart he had never felt before. "Good night, Emily. Thank you, for everything." And with that, Daniel knew that no matter what challenges life might bring, he would always have hope, friendship, and the courage to face the world. The millionaire's mansion had become more than just a house. It had become a symbol of love, kindness, and the transformative power of one small act of friendship. The story of Daniel and Emily would be remembered not just by their families, but by everyone who witnessed the magic they had created together, a reminder that even in the loneliest hearts, friendship can bring light, joy, and life. And so, the boy who had once been invisible and lonely had found a world full of laughter, love, and belonging. All it took was a little girl, a kind heart, and a simple smile that changed everything.